Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jacob Restituto, and I'm a musician from Northport, New York. And today I have a very special guest and honor to have, wow, I'm totally Jason. I almost said Jim. I literally we were talking about how to pronounce your name 30 seconds ago, and now I say Jason. You messed me up with that. We were talking backstage about the Office, and it just totally threw me off. Jason Albert, man, I apologize about that. Welcome to the show, man. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is my first ever YouTube interview.
Wow, welcome.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you, man.
Hope I don't ruin your channel and everybody unsubscribes. But
well, you know what? I already ruined your name, so we'll be even for that.
Yeah.
So for people that are not familiar with you, which actually I'm surprised, I'm happily surprised how many people were really excited about this conversation and stuff. There were a lot of people I mentioned this was happening, and people were really excited. So for the few people that may not be familiar with who you are, can you give a little backstory?
Yeah, I'm Kelly Clarkson's music director. I've been working for her for almost 18 years now, and that's kind of my whole world, my whole life right now. So yeah, she always has about 8 projects going on. So I've been with Kelly for 18 years. Prior to that, did a lot of touring for about 10 years, and songwriter, producer, just as you know, as a self-employed musician, whoever, whatever I can do, I'm available for.
Wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. That's so funny. I highly relate to that. How did you end up getting the original gig with Kelly? How did that, I was doing a little research on your career as a musician and as a producer and all the, like you said, all the different hats that you have worn, whether it be arranger, producer, songwriter, or now music director. How did you make that transition from when you started as a musician to now working with Kelly? So maybe you could give actually a little bit longer a backstory of yourself as a musician. I'd love to hear that.
All right. Yeah, I can give you every little boring detail. But I moved to Nashville in '93 and went to Belmont University, and I actually got married at 18 to my high school sweetheart. We've known each other since kindergarten.
Love that.
And moved to Nashville and never dreamed I could make a career playing music. So I sold my Roland D50 for $600, and we made our move to Nashville with the idea of giving up music. And I was studying music business. So I didn't take any music classes at Belmont. My dream was to be a publicist or something like that. So I got a job at a Christian record label called Sparrow Records at the time. It's now EMI. And I was there for about 6 months. And my wife got a job interning for True Artist Management and managed a band called DC Talk at the time. And they were doing their first headlining tour after their Michael W. Smith tour, and they needed a keyboard player. And so my wife, without telling me, put me on the audition list. If you know anything about CCM music from that era, there was Stephen Curtis Chapman, Michael W. Smith. That was my category, the 80s, piano-based music. DC Talk was a rap group, and I'm like, that's not me. There's no way they're going to hire me, and I didn't even know the songs. Anyway, see, I'm making a very long story. I'm going to get to Kelly.
No, I love it, man. Give all the details. It's a great story.
Yeah. So they were looking for a B3 player, and I'd never played a B3 in my life. So I had a friend.
That's the organ, right? The Hammond B3?
It's the big brown piece of furniture you see me playing on the show every day. I'd never played it, and kind of a guy I looked up to growing up in Texas, he was a B3 player. So I booked a Southwest flight to Austin, and we literally started with, here's how you turn it on, here's how you play it. So did that, came back, did the audition, got the job with DC Talk. Toured with them for 6 years.
Wow.
The Free at Last era, Jesus Freak, and Supernatural.
Which were huge in that genre.
Yeah, and keep in mind, if you're familiar with them, I never played in a high school band. The only thing I'd ever done is play piano at church growing up, and then just obsessed over 80s music. So I never played a club, never played a theater, and literally my first tour with DC Talk was arenas, 20,000 people. It was just for the entire first year. I was so eager. I was up every morning at load in, just looking at the speakers and the light. It was just, it was amazing. So anyway, I dropped out of Belmont after 6 months. Didn't even finish the first semester.
I relate to that.
As a lot of people do. And after DC Talk, I started a band called Zilch on Goatee Records, which morphed into a band called Sonic Flood. And Sonic Flood had a lot of success in that industry. You know, we went gold on our first album.
Yeah.
And so I'm just really bringing this fast. After the second year of Sonic Flood, I sort of had a crisis of conscience. The worship industry was really blowing up at the time, and I was at a conference with a band called Delirious, and I was playing, and we got done. I went in the lobby.
All these massive names you're just dropping all over here.
So I remember I was with my wife and went in the lobby, and it looked like you were at the freaking mall. Like, I just, over time, I got so disgusted with I was passionate about what we were doing musically, but I got so disgusted with the concept of blending spirituality and finance and money. Like, it just, I'm not saying it's wrong for anybody else. For me, I made a decision that I was never going to make another dime off the church again. Like, I felt gross about that. So
interesting.
I wanted to have my income from somewhere else. And if I wanted to be a part of these projects, it would be because I wanted to be, not because I needed the money.
Very interesting.
So we left, disbanded Sonic Flood, and my wife and I moved to LA. And during that time, you brought up before some records you knew that I'd worked on. But while I was in LA, I was producing Matt Redman, Tim Hughes, David Ruiz, Rita Springer, some of the Vineyard people who are still great friends.
Yeah, which I mean, I have to interrupt and just, you're not going to mention it, so I need to mention it for everybody else. The fact that you were, I think, the arranger on Tim Hughes' "Here I Am to Worship," which is probably one and what was it?
I produced it with Dwayne. Yeah, we produced and played everything.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Which is probably one of the biggest songs in the Christian music industry. So like that, like, you weren't going to mention it, but I need to give you that credit because that's huge, man. That's crazy.
So moved out here, and I met a guy named Busby, who, ironically, Busby was one of the songwriters on Kelly's Dark Side, and he's had tons of hits. He unfortunately passed away last year, but we were working on some projects together, and he had auditioned for he was set up for an audition for Nick Carter from Backstreet Boys, who was doing his first solo tour. He got sick, and he was like, "Hey, are you interested in doing this?" And I'm like, "Not really." At this point, I've already toured for 10 years between DC Talk and Sonic Flood, and had young kids, and just like was really not interested in doing the touring thing again. But my wife, as usual, pushed me, and she was like, "No, go do this." And so I showed up at SIR, and again, I'm still at this point, I'm still a country kid grew up in Texas. Next stop was Nashville. Now this is my first month in LA. I've never had sushi. I've never had it, meat and potatoes as southern as you could get. And so I walk into SIR, and there's about 80 people in the lobby, and I was the only I was the only white guy there, which wasn't an issue other than I did not have experience in R&B music. So my assumption was that they're clearly looking for, a certain style of music that is not in my purview. So I walked into the audition, and Nick was there, and management and label. And it's a recurring, I've got some funny stories with Kelly. It's ironic that I have produced almost every one of Kelly's vocals you've ever heard, and I'm the worst singer you've ever, I do not sing. And so, you would love to have a camera with me trying to sing her notes and trying to get what I hear out of my head. I'm like, no, and it's embarrassing.
That's amazing.
And that's just, that's God's sense of humor to put me in a position where I'm vocal producing with no talent there. So all that to say, I walk into the audition, and the guy who does the auditions is Barry Squire. And he's sort of a guy in LA that if you move to town, you call Barry Squire. You may not hear from him for a year, but he will call you eventually. He's like my friends that got into Pink's band, Alanis, Sheryl Crow. He's the guy that put all those bands together back at that time. So I walk in, and he's like, "Hey, why don't you just sit down and sing us a song? Maybe do some Stevie Wonder and sing Superstition, or maybe sing Marvin Gaye's What's Going On." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." I looked at Nick, and I'm like, I don't sing, and this isn't what I do. If you're looking for that, I don't want to waste your time. I'm the wrong guy. If you're looking for somebody who can put your band together, play your record, give you a great tour, I'm there. It's like, all right, don't sing, just sit down, and got the band in and jam with the band. So got the gig. Anyway, they hired me.
As the musical director?
Yeah, as the musical director. He had a young band. It was a lot of his friends from Florida. And so, it was sort of, at the time, I was the old guy that was going to whip these guys in shape. I think I was 28 or 29, something like that.
Oh, no, I'm getting old.
Yeah. So I did that. went out with Nick for about a year, and we were doing the Jingle Ball circuit, which is all the Christmas shows around December, and we were doing 8 shows with Destiny's Child. And we were in Miami, and I flew my brother out to come out on the road with me just to hang out, and because these festivals, there's a ton of bands. Anyway, he wanted to meet Beyonce, so I'm standing in the hallway. I take my brother and I go knock on, I talk to security. I'm like, hey, can we get a picture with Destiny's Child and Beyonce? He's like, yeah, sure, go on in. So I go on in, and they're there, and there's this guy standing there, and they're all talking, and I hand my camera to this guy, and I'm like, hey, do you mind taking a picture of me and my brother with Beyonce and Kelly and Michelle? And we did, so I still have the picture. And as I'm leaving, the guy hands me my camera, because we didn't have camera phones then. And we stand in the hallway talking. It turns out the guy that I handed the camera to was Randy Jackson. And he was in the middle of he was out running front of house for Destiny's Child. And it was towards, this would have been November, 2002, I think. We exchanged phone numbers because I was a big fan of Journey, so we just talked about all the stuff that Randy had worked on between Mariah and Journey, and kind of geeked out a bit. And exchanged numbers, never heard from him. And the following June, first week of June, I get a call, and I just auditioned with Barry Squire again because Nick's thing was coming in. I'd auditioned for Jane's Addiction and got a call, and it was coming down to me and a guy named Chris Pooley, and Chris Pooley's the music director for American Idol now.
Wow.
And Katy Perry. And I was really excited about it. It was definitely more my style of thing. So Randy calls and he's like, hey, yo dog, have this show American Idol, and I'd love for you to be the music, we have this winner and this runner-ups, Kelly and Justin, and they're about to go do a bunch of press and promo and TV shows, and would you be the music director for that? And I'm like, oh man, I'm sorry, I just went out to this other gig, and so I'm gonna have to pass on that. And so I hung up and called my wife, told her the whole story, and she's like, okay, you're crazy, hang up, call him back, because she'd been watching, I'd never seen American Idol, she'd been watching the whole season and voted for Kelly, blah, blah, blah. So I called Randy back, and I'm like, hey, I think I actually want to come do it. And so he put me, a week later, I was doing Leno with Justin Guarini.
Wow.
And Justin and Kelly's movie had just come out, and they had a duet called Timeless, I think, and they were going to perform together in Bryant Park on June 13th. And went out, did the duet with them as Justin's music director, met Kelly, and she's like, oh, you're from Texas? We talked about that a little bit. And a week later, she asked me to be her music director. And so that's how I got to be Kelly's music director. And it's just crazy. I'm sure you hear a ton of stories. It's sometimes you get there by these weird relationships. Like Randy never heard me play a note. Kelly never heard me play a note.
Yeah.
It's just, so there's your long answer.